You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci podcast. And recently, I've been talking to a lot of business coaches, and there are people out there you may not be aware of or know that are available to you if you feel stuck or unsure of where your career path is right now. Maybe you've been downsized. Maybe you're just not happy where you're at. Any number of reasons, right? Things aren't working out. Maybe you're overworked, you're stressed, you're underpaid, whatever the reason is. There are people out there like my guest today, Jeff Schneck with the Entrepreneur Source. And these are people committed to helping people in your shoes, if you're one of those people, to get on the right path, but figure it out. Your brain's probably got a million ideas and you're not sure where to go, what to do. So Jeff is somebody who's a professional out there to help you find the right path and get on the right journey for the next phase of your life and your career. So Jeff, thank you for being here. It's great to have you. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you fell into this role with TES.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's kind of interesting. I, like most people, grew up with the idea that I would always work in one place, get a good job at a very good company, reputable company. I'd work hard. I was instilled with a strong work ethic from my family. And, I'd work there, spend my whole career, work up the food chain, so to speak, find where my talents lie, and thus have a happy, successful life. Maybe even get the gold watch at the end, right? Retire with that.
Yep.
My dad kind of did that. He worked in the oil and gas industry as a chemist. He worked in that area with refineries and things like that. Worked up in the food chain, had a friend of his who got promoted to be head of a refinery. And so he ended up moving the family from the Chicago area down to Houston. And my dad was put in charge of the lab there in that refinery and basically worked his whole rest of his career there, which for me, that was before I was born all the way up through all my high school years and the whole bit. So that was my mentality coming out of school. I was 18 years old. You really kind of don't know where the world is. You kind of get in line with a certain career path, whether it's through college or just going out directly into the workforce. And that was my mentality, right? Work hard, strong work ethic, you get rewarded and you be successful in life. My first job, I stayed with 14 years. And that was great until the company executives made some poor decisions. Company ended up going bankrupt. So here I am without a job because the company goes bankrupt and I didn't do anything wrong. So I have to pick up the pieces, make a new career shift that I hadn't planned on doing. At that time, I had a family. Luckily, I was able to find a position, started work again. It was progressing up the food chain. It was advancing my career in the direction I wanted. I was moving from one job to another. And all of a sudden, because I was caught in what I call the shell game, I was in a new department, but hadn't officially moved according to the work record. My old department had to remove a headcount. I got picked because I wasn't providing for them. Again, losing my job through no fault of my own. I had always gotten exemplary reports and reviews. So now I was out of work again, picking up the pieces because, you don't expect those kind of things. Started out with another company, doing my best to progress in that one. Advanced there, was the number one rated person in my position. And all of a sudden I got told one day, hey, we're making a change. We're laying you off.
Wow.
And here, third time loser, right?
Yeah.
And it's that old adage, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, or shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
Well, here it took me 3 times to figure it out. Maybe this wasn't working out the way I had hoped. And I very fortunately was encountered a career coach from the Entrepreneur Source. They started to talk to me immediately after I was trying to pick up the pieces and started to explore other options. I didn't even know what other options there were. You spend your whole life in a certain lane. You progress up that food chain, that normal things, it all seems like it flows very naturally.
Yep.
In areas that you're interested in, things you're good at, and people you encounter say, hey, try this out. And you do, and you like it, and move on. I think that's how most people's careers are.
Yep.
But this was an opportunity for me to explore new opportunities. What else is out there that I had no idea? And through that individual, I got exposed to a bunch of new opportunities that were out there. They suddenly seemed a lot more appealing because in that entrepreneurial space, I was able to explore options where I had control. I could dictate when I was going and when I was staying. And, the return on your investment, that was always a big thing that I was taught throughout my career, is you're always looking for the return on the investment. Well,
Yep.
when you're working for somebody else, your return is what they deem it to be. So if you're earning them $15, maybe they're going to pay you $10. That made sense. Companies are in business to make money. They're not in business to be charitable, right? So that made sense to me, but I was getting compensated at a level I felt was comfortable. But then I was at the whims of their choices, right? Not even mine, not even my quality. I was an exemplary employee and still was getting the raw end of the deal.
Yep.
And so by exploring these opportunities with that coach, I was able to find new opportunities that were out there that excited me. And I'll be honest, I fell into this role from that endeavor, but it wasn't my only choice, right? I had to actually sit down and pick between several good options. But now I was a little bit more in control. I felt like I had something I had lost, right? A little bit more control over my own destiny, but there was risk with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a risk that through working with that coach, I was exposed to. I knew what they were. It wasn't hidden anymore. It wasn't secret.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I am now able to, in a sense, pay it forward, pay it back to those people who are in that same position like I was.
Yeah.
And that's where my career path has taken me, and how I got into coaching. And to me, it's fun because I get to help people out, even though I don't necessarily expect a lot in return, and that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Walk us through, like, I think when some people are, they're in this phase like you were, right? You were downsized 3 times, and there's a lot of people listening that may be in that position now, or maybe facing that in the future. Maybe there's some worry out there. We know it's kind of a shaky time right now with politics and everything, and everybody's a little bit on edge, I think. Walk us through kind of, how do you ease someone into this idea of, look, you don't need a job. What you need is possibly a business, or you need to take control of yourself and your life and your future. Walk us through kind of, how do you start that conversation with somebody? How do you get them into that mode of the mindset?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a firm believer in the saying, one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, that makes life easier if it did, but life is never about being easy, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing you have to do when talking with anybody is sit down and learn who they are, what's important to them. Even if you think of your own life, right?
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, what you needed at that time, what you wanted at that time is different than what you want or need today.
Yeah.
Right? Early in our life, we're looking at building a career, establishing ourselves, learning what it means to actually be in the workforce, and providing for yourself. You're maybe building a family, expanding that out. And as you get later in life, now you start looking about supporting your kids or your family, putting them into schools. You're looking at building for the future so that you can retire. As you get later in your career path, you're really focused on the retirement. Do I have enough? Can I sustain myself once I am no longer working?
Yeah.
And I think even as you progress through that, the one thing that I really want to emphasize to the people I'm talking to is, what is it really important in your life? Because most of the time, if we were infinitely wealthy, right? If we had Bill Gates money, would we necessarily be working 8 to 10 hours a day, or would we spend more time on things that matter more to us, whether that's hobbies, family, travel, friends, whatever it is? So oftentimes, I think for most people, their life is not necessarily, well, their life ends up revolving time-wise around their job, when it really should revolve around the things that are important to them. And we get caught up in that struggle of how do you create that. I think the term these days is work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Finding that balance. Well, what if you could find a way to answer all those questions in a different way, right? So the first thing I do is I learn about what are your goals, and I do that from what I call a job agnostic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
What obviously we need income, we need to pay our bills, we need to build wealth for the future so that we can someday retire, right?
Yep.
Or do the things that are important to us. And then that lifestyle aspect of how do you create the environment so you can really do the things you enjoy. Learning about that person, that's the important thing, right? Because everybody's different and they're a different walk in life, a
Yep.
different stage in their life. And so you have to spend that time really learning about that individual, make it be about them. And that's why it's fun in what I get to do, because people don't believe that. Well, why are you spending this time talking to me? It's not benefiting you.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not,
Yeah.
but it's benefiting you. And I'm
Right.
paying it forward, like I said before, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I get to do as a coach. I get to pay it forward. The benefits that were provided to me in life, I get to share with other people.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what people are telling you in terms of just fears and worries out there when they cross this path, right? We talked about risk, and you knew there was risk when you got into it. I mean, there's really risk anywhere. I think even if you take a job, there's risk that you may not have that job in 2 years, 3 years. We don't know. So there's risk everywhere. But what are you hearing from people that are talking to you about this, and what are their fears and worries, and how can you alleviate that? How can you give them some more assurance, when it comes to that?
Well, that's true. There is different variations of risk for everybody, no matter what decision you choose. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people look for that perfect solution, right? The money tree growing out back where there's no risk. I just go out every day and pluck a few dollars off there and pay my bills.
Right.
That doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Sure, we'd love to have that, but that reality doesn't exist. So we have to start to look about cost benefits, and
Yeah.
you get into technical terms maybe. But whatever that is for that individual, today's work environment isn't what we thought it was, right? The
Mhm.
dream we've always been told. And that's why I started off by talking about that was the belief I had when I was growing up, right? You
Mhm.
work at that one place, symbiotic relationship, and you work there in mutually beneficial to the end of your career.
Yeah.
The environment today isn't like that. Businesses are very cutthroat. They're very focused on their shareholders, not the
Mhm.
individuals. No
Yeah.
matter how often they espouse, oh, the people are our strength kind of attitude, right? You're just a number. And to a certain degree, we accept that, right? We know that, right? But it's hard when it affects you, right?
Mhm.
It's always easy to talk about it when it's somebody else, or oh my gosh, did you hear what happened to Bill,
Yeah.
right? And when it happens to you, it suddenly makes it real, and you're shocked by it most of the
Right.
time.
Right.
But honestly, everybody's situation is going to be somewhat unique to them, their situation. What are they experiencing? Because some people do find that perfect situation, right? The one we all dreamt about when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Um, and the workforce world is the right place for them.
Yeah.
Whether it's their attitude, their personality, they find the perfect place to work where the job
Mhm.
really does value them.
Yeah.
There are those out there. They're kind of more the unicorn than they are the norm. But what affects one person is going to affect someone else differently. Some people, it's their skill set. My skill set is very pigeonholed. It doesn't transfer real well. Or other people may not see the value in what I do because I don't have the title, or I
Yeah.
don't have the key buzzword that I've been working on.
Yeah.
For other people, it's that what we refer to as the declining economy, work economy,
Mhm.
right? Where jobs are short-lived, they're not paying as much. You're not being, given, I guess, back what you're putting into it. They
Right.
ask you to do more with less. Um, it's just a different environment for every individual, and finding out the pain points of each individual is critical, because you have to be able to talk to that person in ways that they're going to relate to,
Mhm.
right? If they're been in a cycle of they get a job for 16, 18 months, and then they're let go, and they just get in that cycle and cycle and cycle. They're tired of it. They want to be able to put down roots. You're going to talk to them differently than the person who feels like they don't have skill sets. They're spamming everywhere with their resume and not getting any returns, or the returns they're getting are paying them 20% less.
Right.
It really does depend on the individual, because you see it in all different areas.
Yeah.
And for those people who are, let's just say, older in age, because that variable term can mean something different to each person, they're worried about how long am I employable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ageism isn't really a thing unless two things happen. Your cost of what you're expecting to get paid is exceeding what that position pays.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a way where ageism comes into play. But also it's your, honestly, we're such a virtual age. What do you sound and act like when you're on a call, right? Some people could be in their 20s and sound like they're in their 60s. Some people can be 80 and still sound like they're 20 on the phone.
Right.
It matters. Unfortunately, it does. It's all about that impression you give to somebody, and they're worried about how other people perceive that, and that's a factor for them. Even if they're in their 40s and have 20 years left in them, or I've run into someone who is in their 60s and still plan to work for another 20 years. Everybody's a little different. My own mom, who's just turned 90, was substitute teaching all the way up till COVID started. And you think that was, 5-7 years ago, something like that. And here she was working, so she was in her 80s and still working and loving it.
Yeah.
Right. And as a matter of fact, her big fear was, don't tell anyone my age, because she was still energetic, still running circles around me, who's, her youngest kid of 6. So, my mom has always been the human dynamo. Some people are like that, can work well into their 80s and still be very productive and valuable. So it's hard to judge people globally and blanketly. You really need to address them in their current situation and their current fears.
So I want to talk about the financial side, because I think the biggest thing people are going to wonder is, hey, if I'm in a role right now and I want to talk to Jeff about a different direction, I want to get into something. First of all, there's a lot of opportunities out there. There's so many new businesses coming out, franchises out there, thousands, right? But the question is, how am I going to do this financially, right? Maybe I have a little bit of savings, but I don't know if it's enough to get in. Can I get some funding? Can I get some help? What do you have available in terms of that? If someone's really motivated, but they don't quite know whether or not they can afford to do this long term and also have success with it. So what's your thoughts there, Jeff?
Well, it is a common concern for a lot of people. And I've heard statistics over the years about how little Americans save and put away for the future. And so they're almost living paycheck to paycheck. And that can put them in a bad situation. But many of us have resources that we have untapped, right? We didn't realize that was a resource that we could use for starting a business. But if you think about it in the concept that most people are familiar with, buying a home. Well, when you go out and buy a home, let's just say the home costs $200,000. Most of us don't have $200,000 in the bank to spend on it. And if you do, hey, that's great. Go and pay for it with your own money. You're probably better off financially to be able to do so. But most of us don't. So we end up going to a bank, get a mortgage loan, right? And pay for the house that way, and then pay it off over time. Starting up a business can be the same way, right? There are multiple different sources that people use to fund their business. Some of it is in the pay for it yourself area. And hey, that's great if you have that ability. Again, it's probably better overall economically if you can do that, but not everyone has that cash available. So how can I get involved in that? And the reality is, depending on what type of business you want to go into, there's a variable scale of initial cost. Some of them are very, very expensive, multiple millions of dollars. Well, that's out of the range for most people, but not everybody. There are those few who have that ability. But then you start to say, okay, well, I want to get it on the cheaper side. Well, there are some more, let's say, cost-effective options, much like buying a house, right? You're not going to get a house for $10, generally speaking, right? So you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to buy that first house. And certainly in today's economy, that's a lot higher than it used to be. or you can go buy the mansion, right? If you have that kind of money. The same thing with businesses, right? But the funding sources are interesting, and I certainly don't claim to be an expert in them. However, that's why in my coaching, if that's a direction that my clients want to go to, and I always say if, because while you may explore that, that still may not be the option you choose. But if it is, I have resources available that I make available who are experts in that area, can help people work through the funding options. I can give them an info sheet on the different possible options, because obviously the most obvious, pay for it yourself. Second most obvious that most people can think of is you go get a loan, and there are multiple types of loans that you can do that. You can use the equity you have in your home to help pay for a business. There's even a governmental program, at least here in the United States, that you can use your 401k money. And most people think, oh, if I pull it out before a certain age, I got to pay penalties on that. There's actually a federal program out there that allows you to use dollar for dollar without penalties your 401k. That's an option that most accountants don't even know about, right? And so being exposed to those possibilities, hey, there's might be options there. You might have friends or family members, the uncle or their grandparent who has all this extra money and they don't know what to do with it. They want to help you. They could help fund your business. So there are multiple options out there for people. That does not mean that everyone is ready to do that financially. But if you know what is out there, something excites you, gets your blood flowing, and you really want to pursue that, but you can't afford it today, great, put a pin in that. But now you have a target. And most of us need that, right? We need that goal to work towards. It motivates us, keeps us focused. If you suddenly say, hey, I need $10 for something and I only have $5, well, now I know I need to work, but I only have to get $5 more. And then I can make this potential dream a reality. That's an option for some people as well. So when coaching with somebody, you have to, again, meet them where they are. Work with them in their situation, expose them to what might be out there, what's possible. And if you find that perfect match and they find out, oh, wow, this is out there, I really want to go after this and I can afford it, then that's kind of the perfect sequence, right? And they can start a new chapter in their career, doing something different that allows them to achieve the goals that they set for themselves. But not everyone's there. And that's okay. You work with them with where they are.
As we wrap this up, Jeff, and this is all excellent information for people listening out there, I want to ask you about your personal sort of journey with this, because you were one of those people. You're one of those people who's gone through the ups and downs, the roller coaster of the work life, the job life, and then now you've dived into this entrepreneurial role. What have you learned about yourself through this, and what kind of fears, personal fears, did you have to get over, and how did you transition your mindset from that phase into the phase you are now? Because I think people want to hear that, because I'm sure they're feeling the same things you probably felt back then when you were doing that.
Well, it's not all peaches and cream, right? There are fears, there are difficulties. Look, being your own business owner, right? An independent business owner is a wonderful thing because it has a lot of benefits, but there are some negatives. You are now accountable for doing these things. You have to really watch your finances. There are rules and regulations you got to follow, right? To do these type of things. And it takes a certain amount of personal accountability. I often refer to it as wearing multiple hats, right? Like when I'm on a call with one of my clients, I'm wearing a coach's hat. I am there for them. I am present, and I have to be not necessarily energetic, but I have to meet them with what's going to be the most value to them, helping them work through those things. I'm a big talker, as you might have noticed from this little podcast, right? But the reality is, on those coaching calls, you're trying to draw that out from them. You may know the right answer, but you almost have to play dumb because you want them to see the right answer, find it out for themselves. That adage of, you can fish for somebody and feed them for a day, but you teach them how to fish and feed them for a lifetime. You're trying to draw out of them those kind of answers rather than giving it to them. And that can be a challenge. But then, you take that hat off when you're not on the call and you have to wear that business owner hat. Well, what's a business owner's responsibility? Well, as callous as it sounds, business owner's responsibility is still paying the bills, keeping the
Mm-hmm.
lights on, making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to find a way to balance the two. And
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes the challenge that people run into. They can do one or the other really well, but they got to work at the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that dynamic creates situations for people to challenge them. Maybe they get to use things that they've always wanted to use but never had the opportunity before in a corporate setting. Now they get that chance here.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of these aspects, as a business owner, you're responsible for other people, right? I don't have that as much because I'm a business of one person, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am the coach, and I teach, I teach, I coach the individuals that I work with, but I don't have a big staff.
Mm-hmm.
Other opportunities may have a staff, and you have people that you got to be responsible for and manage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different skill set for that. But you find what works for the individual and help them explore that. I'm big on discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so discovery is never going to fail if you're willing to discover and learn. And learning doesn't take effort, right? It just takes time and a dedication to spend learning about it. Absorb the information and then make your own decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's not anything that would cost you anything but your time and your brain power.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing financially involved in that. And then if you find you have a solution that you want to come to, then you can go into that process of exploring, can I afford it?
Mm-hmm.
Can I make that happen? And there is scariness. I'm not gonna lie, right? There's always those unknowns. Until you do it, you don't know whether or not you can do it. The
Mm-hmm.
first time you rode a bike, you were afraid you're gonna fall. And you're
Mm-hmm.
nervous and you're wobbling, and that's why your mom or dad is running with you along the way, or you have training wheels on.
Yep.
Having that support while you're unsure and getting through those things can be invaluable, but eventually you still have to do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do it, the more confidence you get in it and the easier it becomes. But it's always a journey. There's always going to be something else unknown that happens that you didn't plan for. And how do I handle this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Having someone like me who can help you guide through those things, coach you through those things, provide you resources that maybe can help you work through that, because I'm not an expert in everything. But I am smart enough to know if I have a problem, if I have a gap somewhere, I have somewhere I can know I can go to turn to maybe get an expert,
Yeah.
pull in an expert, ask those questions, find out something that at least can be a educated suggestion rather than just a wild guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's always that part of progression in life that I think all of us have experienced. If we've been around the block for a little while, we know to surround ourselves with those kind of people, right? The
Mm-hmm.
people who can fill the gaps of, I'm good at A, but I'm not good at B. Let me
Yep.
make friends with somebody who can help me with B. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily do it for me, but help me work through those things so that I can get better at B.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us successful in life.
I think it's interesting. There was a great quote that said everything in life or everything you want in life is on the other side of fear. And I think the more we are afraid of things, even the small things, if you're afraid of heights, take a little step higher every time you're going somewhere high up. Just confront those fears because you'd be surprised at who you can become when you face those things and tackle them head on. And I think Jeff is the kind of person that can help you do that. It's really a personal choice. And you know what? Life is short, and I think I'm already halfway through mine, and I don't know where the time went. So it's amazing how quickly time flies, especially as you get older and you start working. And next thing you know, you're 55, 65, and you're like, where did the time go? Kids are growing up, families changing, people are moving out. So it's crazy. But Jeff, this has been a great conversation. I think you're full of knowledge and you're definitely a good person to talk to about these kinds of things. How can people reach you directly if they want to get in contact with you and talk to you about this stuff?
Well, I do have a micro site that I have that people can go to. That's my first initial J, last name Schneck, SCHNECK, .eresourcecoach.com. So that's my website you can go to. There is a link on there. You can schedule a call with me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of links on there. You can learn a little bit more about what coaching is and how it can help you. A lot of information there, but obviously, if you want to schedule a call for me, there's an option in there as well.
Yeah.
Um, My schedule is open for anybody who's interested in just beginning the exploration process. Like I said, the first time or two we're going to talk, it's just more a matter of getting to know you,
Yep.
right? Everybody's at a different point in their journey. Let's talk about where you are and where you want it to go. And it can start in your younger years, it can start in your older years. It doesn't
Yep.
really matter. If you're interested in finding the next stage, the next thing you can do and be involved in to make your life achieve closer to the goal you would have for yourself,
Mhm.
then we can talk and see where we can go from there.
Yeah, and I also want to give a shout out to TES, the Entrepreneur Source, as a company, because I work with a few coaches with Client Tether, and I've had nothing but good experiences. Everybody on the team there is excellent. So if you are looking into maybe a career path as a coach, look at the Entrepreneur Source as a good place to start. And I'm sure Jeff, you can attest to that. But I want to thank you for coming on the show and giving us a lot of ideas and knowledge. And I think people who are in a situation in their life where they're stuck, if you're listening and you're just stuck, or maybe you've gone through a layoff, you've been downsized, you're kind of down, you're kind of not sure where to go, don't feel bad. This might be an opportunity. A failure can be an opportunity for you if you just look at it that way. But don't get stuck in that mindset, because there is opportunity for people like you out there. So, Jeff, thank you so much. It was great to have you, and I wish you the best of luck with all you've got going on. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for the time today.
Of course.
Hey, this is Ryan with the Business Stories Podcast, and I want to let you know that we are looking for sponsors for episodes. If you have a company that wants to sponsor an episode, please reach out to me at livingryan@gmail.com. And thanks again for listening.